The Concord Hall gleamed with crystalline perfection, a monument to peace built atop centuries of calculated dominance. Elise Carr adjusted her sleek diplomatic uniform and exhaled slowly as the alien delegates took their seats. The assembly chamber echoed with murmurs, most dismissive, as the human delegation was announced. She felt the weight of their collective condescension but forced herself to wear an unshakable expression. Dr. Amir Patel, standing beside her, tapped his data pad nervously. "Remember," he murmured, "we're here to convince them of our value, not antagonize them. Even if they—" A loud, grating voice interrupted, resonating from a towering Tyran envoy across the room. "Humans!" The words slithered out like an insult. "Always eager to speak, despite having so little to say." Elise kept her composure, though her jaw tightened. She saw Amir flinch, but his resolve hardened as he turned to the assembly. "With respect, Ambassador Krall, humanity has always chosen action over empty rhetoric. Our contributions—" A flash of light erupted from nowhere, followed by the deafening crack of a projectile. Screams ricocheted through the chamber as Amir collapsed, a jagged wound blooming across his chest. Time seemed to freeze. Elise knelt beside him, her hands trembling as she pressed against the injury. Blood seeped through her fingers, an unmistakable crimson that marked humanity's fragility in a room of beings with regenerative scales or liquid cores. "Security!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the chaos. Her eyes darted to the gallery above, catching the retreating silhouette of a Tyran assailant. The guards reacted sluggishly, moving with more interest in containing the humans than pursuing the perpetrator. Amir's breaths grew shallow. He gripped Elise's wrist weakly. "They'll dismiss this," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Don't let them." His hand went limp. The room fell into a tense silence as Elise rose, her hands still slick with blood. The Concord's High Chancellor, a gelatinous figure encased in a translucent exosuit, spoke with cold detachment. "This unfortunate incident is regrettable. The perpetrator appears to be a rogue Tyran dissident. We will, of course, offer Earth appropriate compensation." Elise's glare could have melted steel. "Compensation?" Her voice was calm but razor-sharp. "Dr. Patel wasn't a diplomat to be bought off with trinkets. He was a father, a scientist, a man who believed in this alliance's ideals. And you call his murder unfortunate?" "Human," Krall interjected smugly. "Your dramatics are unnecessary. The Concord has spoken. This matter is closed." Elisa's fist clenched, but she forced herself to remain composed. The humans were being tested, and she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of watching her falter. "If the Concord refuses to act, Earth will." Krall chuckled, a guttural sound that made her stomach churn. "What will your fledgling world do? Send your quaint little ships to protest? Humanity lacks the teeth to bite, let alone roar." She met his gaze, her voice steady and deliberate. "You're about to find out how wrong you are." Hours later, back aboard Earth's modest flagship Resolute, Elise paced the command deck as the transmission to Earth's Council connected. The holographic projection of Chairman Devereux materialized, his usually placid expression clouded with fury. "Elise," he began, "we've reviewed the footage. Patel's death is nothing short of an act of war." "Agreed," Elise replied, her voice devoid of the usual diplomatic polish. "But the Concord is spinning it as a rogue attack. They won't pursue justice. They think we'll take their scraps and fall back in line." Devereux's jaw tightened. "And what do you propose?" She stopped pacing, locking eyes with the hologram. "Activate Operation Aegis." The chairman hesitated. "You understand the implications of deploying the QFA? The galaxy doesn't know it exists. Once we reveal it, there's no going back. They'll paint us as aggressors. They already see us as weak," Elise countered. "The QFA isn't just a weapon, it's a message. We're done being underestimated. Patel's death won't go unanswered." Devereux was silent for a moment before nodding grimly. "You have authorization. Make it count." The Concord's diplomatic station was a sprawling behemoth of glass and steel, suspended in the void like a jewel in the darkness. Elise stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the station loom closer. The Q-phase activation console pulsed faintly beside her, its ethereal hum a reminder of the immense power she now wielded. "Captain," her tactical officer said, "QFA is primed. Targeting systems are online." Elise nodded. "Engage on my mark." The Concorde's fleet, a glittering array of advanced warships, remained docked, their crews oblivious to the storm about to break. She opened a channel to the station, her voice carrying the weight of Earth's fury. "This is Captain Elise Carr of Earth's Resolute. In light of the Concorde's refusal to act, Earth has taken matters into its own hands. You have 1 hour to comply with our demands, full disclosure of Tyvran involvement, and the immediate suspension of Ambassador Krall." Laughter echoed through the response channel. "And if we refuse, human?" It was Krall again, his arrogance dripping through every word. Elise didn't respond. She simply nodded to her tactical officer. "Mark." The QFA unleashed a pulse of energy, invisible to the naked eye but catastrophic in its effect. Concorde warships powered down instantly, their engines silenced, their shields collapsing like paper. On the station, lights flickered before plunging entire sections into darkness. Panic spread like wildfire. Elise opened the channel again. "That was a demonstration. The next pulse will target your life support systems. You have 30 minutes. The Concorde assembly erupted into chaos. Krall's voice, now tinged with fear, stammered over the comms. "You would doom us all? This is madness." "Madness," Elise said coolly, "is thinking Earth would stand by while our people are slaughtered. You underestimated us. That was your first mistake. Don't make another." Minutes later, a Concorde envoy stammered through a formal surrender. Krall was dragged into custody, his protests drowned out by the station's alarms. Elise stood on the bridge, her expression unreadable as she watched the once mighty fleet floating powerless in the void. Her tactical officer broke the silence. "Orders, Captain?" "Stand down," she said, her voice soft but firm. "They've had their warning." As the Resolute pulled away, Elise allowed herself a moment to breathe. Patel's death could never be undone, but Earth had sent a message no one would forget. Humanity had found its teeth. And when it roared, the galaxy listened. The Resolute hung in the void like a dagger poised to strike, its sleek frame a stark contrast to the Concorde fleet, now adrift and powerless. Elise stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the holographic display of the station. It was chaos. Emergency lights flashed as crews scrambled to restore control. Her calm officer nodded, signaling the open channel. "This is Captain Elise Carr." Her voice cut through the static, cold and steady. "Earth demands full accountability for the assassination of Dr. Amir Patel, immediate disclosure of the conspirators involved, and the unconditional surrender of Ambassador Krall. You have 15 minutes to respond." The response came faster than expected, an unsteady voice trembling through the speakers. "This is Envoy Sharath of the Concorde Council. Your actions are reckless, human. This demonstration is nothing short of an act of war." Elise smirked, though her tone remained measured. "And the murder of a diplomat isn't? Spare me the outrage, Envoy. The clock is ticking." Sharath stammered, but another voice interrupted, a deeper, more composed tone. "Captain Carr, this is Chancellor Virex. Let's not be hasty. Surely we can resolve this matter without further aggression. Stand down your weapon, and we can negotiate." Elise's hand tightened into a fist at her side. "Negotiate? You've had your chance to negotiate. You dismissed Dr. Patel's murder as unfortunate, ignored Earth's protests, and now, when faced with consequences, you want to talk? No, Chancellor. Words are meaningless without accountability." Virex's voice turned cold. "You overestimate your position. The Concorde fleet could obliterate Earth in an instant if we so chose." Elise gestured to her tactical officer, who initiated another pulse. On the display, a dozen Concorde frigates sputtered and went dark, their systems utterly neutralized. Elise spoke evenly. "Funny. They don't look capable of obliterating much right now." Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. The tension was palpable, and Elise could feel the weight of her crew's eyes on her back. They believed in her, trusted her judgment, but the enormity of their actions wasn't lost on any of them. This was no simple retaliation. This was a statement to the galaxy. "Captain," her comm officer whispered. "Another transmission coming through. Private channel. Originating from within the station." "Put it through," Elise said, her brow furrowing. A new voice came online, hushed and hurried. "Captain Carr, this is Analyst Mrak, Internal Auditor for the Concord Security Division. I have information, proof, that the Tyrant assassination was coordinated by Chancellor Vyrex's inner circle." Elise's eyes narrowed. "Go on." "The Tyrant assassin was planted to provoke Earth into reacting. They believed you'd retaliate with brute force, proving humanity's supposed instability and justifying restrictions on your military. The QFA, they didn't know about it, did they?" "No," Elise said quietly. "They didn't. That's why they're panicking now. They underestimated your capabilities. I can transmit the evidence to you, but you need to act quickly. Vyrex will order my execution the moment he suspects I've contacted you." Elise's mind raced. This was the leverage she needed, but the stakes were higher than ever. If Vyrex discovered Mrak's betrayal, the Concord could spiral into further chaos, dragging Earth into a protracted war. "Send the data, Mrak," Elise ordered. "We'll ensure your safety." "I appreciate the sentiment, Captain, but my safety is a lost cause. Focus on exposing the truth." The channel cut abruptly. Elise felt a pang of guilt but forced it down. There was no time for hesitation. The tactical officer spoke, his tone urgent. "Captain, we're detecting power surges from the station. Looks like Vyrex is preparing a countermeasure. Activate the QFA shielding field," Elise commanded. "And prepare to broadcast Mrak's data. The galaxy needs to see this." Her comm officer nodded, working swiftly. Moments later, a file appeared on the central display: timestamps, correspondence logs, encrypted directives. The evidence was damning. Elise's lips pressed into a thin line as she reviewed it. Vyrex's plan was more sinister than she'd imagined. Not only had he orchestrated Patel's murder, but he'd also planned to frame humanity for false retaliatory strikes on other Concord worlds. "This ends now," Elise said. "Transmit the data across all Concord frequencies. Let every member world see the truth." "Transmission live," the comm officer confirmed. On the display, feeds from across the galaxy lit up with the evidence. Elise watched as outrage spread like wildfire. Concord representatives shouted over one another in disbelief and fury. Some demanded Vyrex's immediate resignation, while others called for his arrest. The Chancellor's voice broke through again, now tinged with desperation. "Captain Carr! You have no idea the chaos you're unleashing. The Concord's unity is fragile. If you tear it apart, you'll doom us all. Unity built on lies isn't unity," Elise shot back. "It's oppression. Maybe it's time the Concord learned that humanity isn't here to be trampled." The tactical officer spoke again, his voice grim. "Captain, we've got incoming. Concord reinforcements, 7 ships. Estimated arrival in 3 minutes." Elise took a steadying breath. "Position the Resolute between the station and the reinforcements. Charge the QFA for one final pulse. If they won't back down, we'll disable them too." The seconds ticked by as the Resolute moved into position. The crew worked with practiced precision, but the tension in the air was suffocating. Elise glanced at the view screen, where the Concord reinforcements loomed closer. She knew this wasn't just about Earth anymore. This was about sending a message to every species that had been silenced or overlooked by the Concord's elites. "Incoming transmission from the reinforcements," the comm officer announced. Elise nodded. On screen, a weary-looking alien commander appeared, her expression one of resignation. "Captain Carr, this is Commander Ivala of the Threxan Defense Fleet. We've reviewed the evidence you transmitted. It seems the Concord owes humanity more than an apology. We will not engage." Elise allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Thank you, Commander. Your integrity won't be forgotten. As the reinforcements stood down, the station's alarms blared, signaling an internal conflict. Reports flooded in of Concord factions turning on Virex's supporters. The Chancellor's voice, once so commanding, now sounded frail and desperate as he issued a final plea. This is madness. Humanity will destroy everything we've built. Elise's response was swift and cutting. No, Chancellor. Humanity just exposed the cracks in what you built. If it collapses, it's because it was never meant to stand. The station fell silent as Virex was taken into custody by his own guards. The Resolute powered down its QFA, and for the first time since the confrontation began, peace seemed possible. Elise turned to her crew, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Set course for Earth. We've done what we came to do. Let the galaxy handle the rest. As the Resolute slipped into the void, Elise allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Patel's death had been a tragedy, but his legacy now stood as a testament to humanity's resilience. One life lost, but a galaxy forever changed. The Resolute cut through the void, its crew tensely awaiting the fallout from their audacious gambit. Elise Carr leaned against the command console, reviewing the live transmissions from across the galaxy. The broadcast of Chancellor Virex's conspiracy had done its job. Outrage rippled across Concord member worlds, with protests erupting against the leadership's corruption. Some allies called for reform, others for revolution. It was the opening Earth had needed, but the storm was far from over. Captain, the tactical officer broke the tense silence. Incoming communication. Priority 1. It's the Concord Provisional Council. Put them through, Elise ordered, straightening her posture. The familiar holographic chamber of Concord's interim leaders appeared, their faces etched with equal parts desperation and fury. The new council head, a spindly Sakari named Jorvan, addressed her. Captain Carr, you've caused irreparable damage to the Concord's stability. Your reckless actions have thrown entire sectors into chaos. Elise's voice was measured, but her resolve cut through like a blade. The Concord's stability was built on lies, Jorvan. If exposing the truth causes chaos, then perhaps the Concord wasn't as strong as you thought. Another council member, an avian like Treylock, screeched indignantly. This truth you've broadcast has undermined the legitimacy of our leadership. Do you realize what you've done? Rogue factions are rising, using your actions as justification for rebellion. Elise remained unflinching. Your leadership undermined itself. Earth didn't assassinate Dr. Patel. Earth didn't conspire to provoke a war. Virex did. And now you have a choice: clean up your house or watch it burn. Jorvan's tone shifted, laced with a thin veneer of control. You assume your position is unassailable, Captain. But the QFA won't protect Earth from the political consequences of your actions. Humanity has made many enemies today. Humanity has been underestimated for too long, Elise countered. You called us reckless, primitive, insignificant. But you've seen what we can do. The QFA isn't just a weapon, it's a warning. Earth is done playing by your rules. Jorvan leaned forward, his expression hardening. Then what is your endgame, Carr? What does Earth want? Elise locked eyes with the hologram, her voice cutting through the tension like steel. We want justice for Dr. Patel. We want Earth recognized as an equal member of the Concord, with full rights and protections. And we want every species oppressed by your corruption to have the chance to rebuild a better future. That's the endgame. The council fell silent, their holographic forms flickering in tense contemplation. Finally, Jorvan spoke. Your demands are bold. But the galaxy doesn't bend to threats, Captain. Then it bends to consequences, Elise replied. And Earth is more than willing to deliver them. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in heavy silence. Elise turned to her crew, their faces a mix of anxiety and determination. Status report, she called out. QFA is operational, the tactical officer confirmed. No immediate threats detected. Concord reinforcements are holding position at their last known coordinates. Good, Elise said. They know better than to test us again. But we can't assume they'll stay that way. Her comm officer spoke up, hesitation in her voice. Captain, we're receiving an encoded transmission. Origin unknown, but it matches the signature of Analyst Mrak. Elise's pulse quickened. Put it through. The hologram of Mrak flickered to life, his usually composed demeanor now fraught with urgency. Captain Carr, I don't have much time. Virex's loyalists are regrouping. They've retreated to a fortified outpost in the Atres Nebula, where they're rallying support from rogue factions. They're planning a counterstrike to reclaim control of the Concord. Elise's jaw tightened. How large is their force? Significant, Mrak replied. But the real threat is the prototype weapon they've been developing. It's called the Neurocollapse Array, an experimental device capable of paralyzing entire populations. If they deploy it, they won't just target Earth. They'll use it to subjugate dissenting member worlds and consolidate power. Elise's mind raced. The stakes had just escalated. Why didn't you report this sooner? I only uncovered the details after your broadcast, Mrak explained. Virex's files were heavily encrypted. But there's more. The device relies on a rare element, Sarionite, which limits its range. If you can disrupt their supply chain, you can render the weapon useless. Elise nodded, already forming a plan. Send me the coordinates of their outpost and supply routes. We'll handle the rest. Be careful, Captain, Mrak said, his voice heavy with concern. Virex's loyalists are desperate. They'll stop at nothing to regain control. The transmission ended, and Elise turned to her crew. You heard him. Plot a course for the Atres Nebula. This ends now. The bridge erupted into activity as the Resolute prepared for its next move. Elise's tactical officer approached her, his expression grim. Captain, even with the QFA, we're outnumbered. And if this Neurocollapse Array is operational, it won't be, Elise interrupted. Because we're going to stop it before it becomes a threat. The officer hesitated, then nodded. Understood, Captain? The Resolute entered the Atres Nebula, its sensors scanning for the outpost. The nebula's swirling gases obscured visibility, but the crew worked tirelessly to pinpoint their target. Finally, the tactical officer spoke. We've located the outpost, Captain. It's heavily fortified, with multiple frigates in defensive formation. Elise studied the display, her mind racing. Prepare the QFA for a precision strike. Target their Sarionite storage facilities. If we hit them hard and fast, we can disable their weapon before they have a chance to react. The crew worked quickly, the tension on the bridge palpable. As the QFA charged, Elise addressed her team. This isn't just about Earth anymore. If we fail, the galaxy falls into the hands of tyrants. But if we succeed, we send a message to every species fighting for freedom. Humanity stands with them. The QFA unleashed its energy, striking the outpost with pinpoint accuracy. Explosions rippled through the facility as the Sarionite storage facilities were destroyed. The Loyalist fleet scrambled to respond, but their systems faltered under the QFA's disruption field. Direct hit, the tactical officer reported. Their weapon is offline, and their fleet is in disarray. Elise allowed herself a small smile. Good. Now let's finish this. The Resolute launched its fighters, engaging the Loyalist ships in a swift and decisive battle. Despite their numbers, the enemy fleet was no match for Earth's coordinated assault. One by one, their ships fell until the outpost was left defenseless. Captain, the comm officer said, we're receiving a distress signal from the outpost. They're requesting terms of surrender. Elise's expression hardened. Open a channel. Virex's face appeared on the screen, his once arrogant demeanor replaced by desperation. Captain Carr, you've proven your point. Let's negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate, Elise interrupted. Your weapon is destroyed, your fleet is defeated, and your corruption is exposed. The Concord will rebuild without you. Virex's image flickered as the signal was cut. Elise turned to her crew, her voice resolute. Secure the outpost and transmit our findings to the Provisional Council. Earth isn't just defending itself, we're building a better galaxy. As the Resolute prepared to depart, Elise allowed herself a moment of reflection. The fight was far from over, but today, humanity had proven its worth. And for the first time, the galaxy was listening. The Resolute hung silently above the smoldering remains of the Loyalist outpost. The echoes of battle still lingered on the comm channels as the crew worked tirelessly to consolidate their victory. Elise Carr stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the incoming reports. The neural collapse array was beyond repair, its power source obliterated in the strike, and Virex's forces were scattering across the nebula. The fight, for now, was over. "Captain," her comm officer called out, breaking the silence. "The Concord Provisional Council is requesting an update on the operation." Elise turned to face the central display as the holographic forms of Jorvin and the other council members flickered into view. Their expressions were grim, their pride visibly bruised. Elise wasted no time. "The neural collapse array has been destroyed. Virex's fleet is in full retreat. Humanity has done what the Concord refused to do, protect the galaxy from tyranny." Jorvin's mandibles clicked in frustration, but his tone remained measured. "You have dealt a significant blow to Virex's loyalists, Captain. However, your actions have left the Concord in a precarious position. The fractures in our unity grow wider with each passing moment." "Those fractures were inevitable," Elise said, her voice unwavering. "Your leadership built this alliance on a foundation of exploitation and deceit. What you're experiencing isn't the result of Earth's actions. It's the consequences of your own failures." A Treylock delegate, his feathers ruffled with agitation, interjected sharply. "Captain Carr, your rhetoric is as dangerous as your weaponry. The Concord cannot endure if member worlds continue to view Earth as a destabilizing force." Elise stepped forward, her eyes locking onto the Trellock's holographic gaze. "Destabilizing? Let's be clear. Earth didn't assassinate a diplomat to provoke a war. Earth didn't build a weapon to paralyze entire populations. And Earth didn't conspire to consolidate power through fear. If the Concord's unity can't survive without those things, then maybe it's not worth preserving." The chamber fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the council. Finally, Jorvin spoke, his tone softer but still guarded. "What is it you propose, Captain? Surely, you don't intend to dismantle the Concord entirely." "Not dismantle," Elise replied. "Reform. Earth isn't here to tear the galaxy apart. We're here to build something better. But that starts with acknowledging the Concord's failures and holding those responsible accountable." Jorvin hesitated, his mandibles twitching as he considered her words. "And what role does Earth envision for itself in this reformed alliance?" "A seat at the table," Elise said without hesitation. "Not as a subordinate, not as a scapegoat, but as an equal. Humanity has earned that right." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, the tension palpable even through the holographic display. Finally, Jorvin nodded. "Your demands will be discussed in the upcoming emergency summit. Until then, Captain, the Concord expects Earth to act with restraint." Elise allowed herself a faint smile. "Restraint is something we've practiced for far too long. Now, it's time for action." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in a heavy silence. Elise turned back to her crew, their faces reflecting a mix of exhaustion and determination. "We've done what we came here to do," she said, her voice carrying the weight of their shared struggle. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy is watching us now. Let's make sure they see the best of humanity." A murmur of agreement rippled through the bridge as the crew returned to their stations. Elise moved to the observation deck, staring out at the distant stars. Her thoughts drifted to Patel, to the life lost that had set this chain of events in motion. His death had been senseless, a tragedy born of arrogance and greed, but it had also been a catalyst for change. She only hoped the price they paid would be worth it. "Captain," the voice of her first officer broke through her reverie. "We've received a transmission from one of the liberated worlds. They want to express their gratitude for Earth's actions." Elise nodded, gesturing for the message to be played. The voice that came through was tremulous but earnest, belonging to a member of a minor species that had long been subjugated under Concord rule. To the people of Earth, the message began. Your courage and defiance have inspired hope where there was none. For too long, we have lived in fear, silenced by the weight of oppression. But today, you have shown us that even the smallest voice can echo across the stars. Thank you. The bridge fell quiet as the message ended, the words lingering in the air like a solemn promise. Elise turned to her first officer. Send a response, she said. Tell them this: Earth stands with all who seek freedom. This fight isn't over. The officer nodded, and Elise returned to the observation deck. The stars seemed closer now, their light piercing through the darkness with renewed clarity. Humanity had taken its first true steps onto the galactic stage, not as a subordinate or a pawn, but as a force to be reckoned with. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but Elise knew they would face them together, with the same resilience and determination that had brought them this far. As the Resolute prepared to leave the Atres Nebula, Elise allowed herself a rare moment of quiet pride. They had proven that humanity was more than the galaxy had ever imagined. And they were just getting started.